The Oklahoma Sooners appear to be making some moves on the 2026 recruiting trail. And for Oklahoma Sooner fans that love recruiting, this is great news. So they recently just made a running back offer. You've seen Oklahoma with some of their bigger targets start to announce commitment dates, and you've seen another top wide receiver lock in an official visit. So we're going to talk about all of that today. Before we do, as always, I want to hear from y'all. So make sure you join the discussion, jump in the comments below, give me your thoughts, especially on the 26 recruiting class so far, and quite frankly, how you think Oklahoma's done. I feel like I know what the answer is going to be, but I still want to hear from y'all. Still want to have a discussion. But where we got to get started today is probably one of the more intriguing spots. I didn't think this would be an intriguing spot for Oklahoma at the start of the recruiting cycle, but it's turned into it now. And that's going to be the running back position, because Oklahoma had a couple targets here in the 26 class they were originally looking at. And if you remember, when we started originally really early talking about the 26 recruiting class, we talked about guys like Jaden Osborne, Tadarian Bell, and Oklahoma kind of fell out of those recruitments pretty early. And so you focused a lot of attention on a guy like Jonathan Hatton. You looked at guys like Katie Jones. Now, it felt like Oklahoma kind of backed off Katie Jones a little bit, and he ended up committing to Oklahoma State. But then you look at Jonathan Hatton, where Oklahoma had him committed in this class, had him committed really early, which sometimes isn't ideal because sometimes those guys just don't stick, but ended up decommitting. But on his recommitment, Oklahoma almost got that commitment. He ended up committing to Texas A&M. So potentially Jonathan Hatton's still on the board. And we know that DeMarco Murray is actually still pushing there. And this is a guy that Oklahoma would still like in this class, and they would still like to flip. So maybe that happens down the line. However, Oklahoma just recently made an offer for De'Sephen Walker. So you guys can see him here on the screen, a 5'11", 190-pound running back out of the state of Missouri. So listen, you can have your own opinions on running backs or any player out of the state of Missouri and whether or not Oklahoma is going to be able to land that player, because if Missouri swoops in late, yeah, they could always be a problem, or even the University of Kansas. But De'Sephen Walker, this is a guy that, listen, when he gets free, this dude's got speed. And so you see a couple schools that got an official visit for him. Nebraska on June 20th, Notre Dame on June 13th, Kansas State on June 6th, was at Kansas on April 4th. I will say, out of the schools that he's taken official visits to or is going to take an official visit to, Notre Dame kind of intrigues me a little bit. I'm curious to see what happens with that, because Notre Dame just recently got Jaden Osborne. Are they going to look at taking another high-end level running back in this class? Would another one want to jump on board with them? Obviously, Nebraska needs help at the running back position, so this would be a great addition for them, and this is in their pipeline. So this obviously isn't a done deal yet. He's got 24 total offers, Oklahoma being one of his bigger ones. So we'll see where Oklahoma can kind of go from there to be able to land his services. But this was a guy that he's rushed for over 2,000 yards in his career. I think he has like 16 touchdowns. So very productive kid in high school. And you would imagine if he has a really good senior year, he's going to continue to go up some people's boards late as a potential flip target. Now, where does Oklahoma go at the running back position if I don't land Walker? I really don't know, because this hasn't been the typical DeMarco Murray recruiting cycle that we've seen. Usually he's the superstar that walks into your building and, like he's the offer. Oklahoma's the offer that you want. And it just hasn't quite been there in this cycle. But if you're Oklahoma, you've got to take at least one guy on the recruiting trail in the 2026 class, in my opinion, at the running back position, because you don't want to solely rely on the portal. However, I do feel like the portal does have its advantages because you've seen the guys at the college level, so you've been able to kind of evaluate them a little differently than you would evaluate some of these running backs at the high school level. And so for a guy like Jim Nagy, he might be able to find a diamond in the rough in college football, be able to get him to Oklahoma. Maybe they cost you a little less than a running back on the recruiting trail, Well, maybe until after they ball out the first year at Oklahoma, and then you got to pony up and pay them. But I just don't feel like the transfer portal is super sustainable. And although you really like some of the young talent that you have in this room currently, you've had to burn some red shirts. So I think it's important that Oklahoma tries to go out there and land 2 running backs. Ideally, you would want to flip Jonathan Hatton. But if you only get 1 running back, I don't think it's the end of the world. You'll just have to turn to the transfer portal to take potentially 2 guys. Now, Oklahoma did get an announcement from a 4-star defensive lineman that Todd Bates and the staff have been working on quite a bit. The 6'4", 290-pound defensive lineman out of the state of Florida from Jacksonville, Brian Harris, recently just announced his top schools list, as you can see right here, and that he's going to be announcing his commitment on May 23rd. So you see Alabama, Michigan, Oklahoma, Penn State, South Carolina. Some of the only schools that you're missing here are the Florida schools, kind of being from Florida. So maybe that's good news for Oklahoma. When you look at the places, you're following the visits. Where has he been? South Carolina 3 times, Penn State 2 times, Oklahoma 2 times, Michigan 2 times. So outside of South Carolina, everybody's had a pretty fair amount or fair shake at the amount of visits that they've gotten from Brian Harris. Talking to Brian Harris, he is trying to make it back up for the June 6th official visit. Now, I don't know. That was before he dropped his kind of commitment date. So we'll see if he ends up still making that or not. Obviously, if he still plans on making it after having a commitment date dropped, that seems like pretty good news for Oklahoma. But we'll just kind of have to see how the commitment goes down the road. I do know that Todd Bates and Oklahoma, phenomenal relationship here. They've been pushing hard. Brian Harris is a priority target for Todd Bates, especially for Todd Bates, who needs to go out there and probably get 3 to 4 interior defensive linemen in this class. So watch for Brian Harris's commitment, one of the few that Oklahoma are watching for down the stretch here in the spring. Lastly, though, to end it, Oklahoma lost Aljor Miles to SMU, but they had a top target still on the board in Jaden Warren out of Iowa Colony in Rocheron, Texas, the 6'1.5", 195-pound wide receiver, the number 131st player in the 247 composite rankings. Currently has an OV scheduled with SMU on June 6th, Houston on June 12th, and Nebraska on June 14th. But he has locked in 3 others. He's got A&M, he's got Houston, he's got TCU, and he's got Oklahoma. So Oklahoma, if you guys remember, they've been in on Jaden Warren, 33 offers from some of the most elite teams in college football, especially at the wide receiver position. But Oklahoma is going to be getting an official visit from him, and this is definitely going to be a position of need after you've lost a couple targets on your board, and it feels like you're pulling back on Mason James a little bit. Remember, we talked about Dallas Dickerson and Oklahoma potentially pivoting to him, but Jaden Warren would be a phenomenal addition to this class for Oklahoma. So I want to hear from y'all. Make sure you guys join the discussion. Jump in the comments below. Give me your thoughts. And if you guys are new to the channel, make sure you guys hit that like and you guys hit that subscribe button.